My brothers and sisters, one of the most important questions we must ask and try to understand is the following. What is the good life? For when we answer this question, we are indicating where we wish to spend our time and where we wish to spend our talent and where we wish to spend our resources. We are indicating what we believe to be the thing that will give us personal fulfillment and happiness. Our society offers us a number of candidates for the good life. Money. It offers us material possessions. It offers us popularity, power, and fame. We are constantly told that if we only have enough, if we can control enough, happiness will be ours. Success and the good life go together as a result of achieving the brass ring of earthly abundance. However, we come to realize, some of us sooner than others, that there is more to the good life than the promises of television, the things in the shopping mall, and the big bucks on Wall Street. There is a deeper dimension to our existence which cannot be ignored. It is that holy space that only God can fill with His presence. It is the only thing that the Lord, who can quiet the heart's deepest longings and desire for serenity. Yet we keep on looking for the good life. The good life in the glory of this world which passes into the divine glory of God. Earthly goods are not bad or evil things. In fact, they point us to the goodness of God. What we must be ever on guard against is the temptation to understand the good life solely in terms of earthly realities. The reason we find it so easy to be submerged into material things is that they are so immediate to the senses. You know what I'm talking about, that instant gratification that give us the illusion that they can bring us happiness. They become idols which only leave us very disappointed. The reading from 2nd Isaiah points us in the right direction. The prophet said, "Seek the Lord while He may be found. Call Him while He is near." The real danger from riches is that they blind us to the riches and richness of God's love. An abundance of material goods can easily allow us to overlook the one alone who is good, and that is God, the true source of lasting peace and happiness. It is not found in the money section of the newspaper or the latest poll revealing our popularity. In fact, if we do not first love God completely, all of our possessions and relationships become distorted. We try to fill up our hearts with the things that fail to satisfy. Yet if we love God above all things, we find that we learn to use the good things of life in the proper fashion. To seek the Lord is to find a treasure which is beyond price. Now, brothers and sisters, it is at this point that we become skeptical. Isn't this just a little too good to be true? We feel lying beneath the surface is some hidden agenda. God is going to require us to do something beyond our capabilities. God, however, does not want us to do anything. The gift of His love cannot be earned. It is a free gift. Besides, God does not want our external behavior. He wants our whole hearts freely responding to His unbounded love for us. God does not demand it or force Himself upon us. God gives Himself freely, and He wants us to respond in kind. St. Paul, the apostle, tells us that life means Christ. Nothing in this world can compare with the manifold richness of God. Perhaps we feel it is too late for us to respond to God's invitation and God's love. Perhaps there is some sin which keeps us from accepting God's forgiveness. Imagine, my brothers and sisters, for a moment that someone you work with gets the same salary as you, but only does a quarter of the work you do. Okay, maybe some of you do not have to imagine it because it's actually happening in your workplace. My guess is that it would not or does not sit well with you. I know that I probably would be a little upset myself. It seems to me that we all would like to get what we deserve when it comes to our job. Of course, when we interview for jobs, we do not say, I just want to make sure that I'm not going to be overpaid compared to my coworkers. Am I right about that? And I imagine that no one has ever said, since I'm only going to be working 20 hours a week, I better be getting a lot less than the full-timers. In fact, when it comes to that time during every job interview, when the two parties have to talk money, the person applying for the job is hoping that the offer will be even higher than he or she expects or maybe even deserves. It is funny how that works. You know when and where this is leading. The gospel story we have just heard. The landowner in the parable says all of his workers, he pays them the same amount, even though they work different numbers of hours. And when we hear this story, many of us think to ourselves, well, that just does not seem fair. Of course, when we think those words, we are putting ourselves in the place of the workers who work the most. We might be wise to consider how we would feel if we were the ones on the receiving end of one's generosity. In one situation, we are resentful. And in the other, we are more than pleased and we are grateful. However, I think there is a danger of misinterpretation of this story if we simply come away from it with the idea that God is just with some people and overly generous with others, or that some of us get exactly what we deserve while others get much more, or that God is extra kind to some people but less so with others. If we interpret the story only in those terms, we might come to the logical conclusion that God does not treat us all the same. And we could probably not be more wrong, at least in the way most of us would understand that statement. Part of the problem, I believe, is that we talk about these attributes and actions of God as if they are completely different things. As if God is somehow made up of love. If God is somehow made up of generosity. That God is somehow made up of anger. That God is somehow made up of mercy. That God is somehow made up of judgment. That God is somehow made up of fairness. That God is somehow made up of punishment, and etc., 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 on and on and on. And that God basically spends his time sitting around deciding who gets what. Now, I'm not sure that makes a whole lot of sense. To me, that seems to be kind of a projection of us, of ourselves, and the way we do things. Actually, in faith, we believe that God simply is. God really cannot be divided up in that way, nor can he be reduced to purely human qualities and human characteristics. You see, when we talk about God, we are limited by language. And so when we try to say something about God, we are forced to use words that normally are used to describe the human feelings, our human attitudes and attributes. in a sincere attempt to understand and express the inexpressible. But God simply is. God's love is mercy. God's love is his judgment. God's love is his anger. God's love is his generosity. God's love is his justice. From our human perspective, it can look as if God picks and chooses who gets the most and who gets the least, who gets limitless blessings and who must go without, who has a special place in his heart and who is much further down on the totem pole. What is really happening is God simply being God. In the words of Isaiah, as high as the heavens are above the earth, so high are my ways above your ways, and my thoughts above your thoughts. And so how might we understand this story? It is right in front of us. You see, we have a tendency to focus on the fact that the laborers did not all put in the same amount of work. That is just us being preoccupied with our limited understanding of fairness. Let's take a moment to talk about jealousy versus envy. Jealousy. Definition of jealousy is being resentful, suspicious of a rival or a rival's influence. Now that's not too bad. We all sometimes can be a little jealous. So it's all right. Sometimes we wonder, how did he get that new car? How did that guy get that pretty wife? That's jealousy. But my brothers, envy, we got to be careful. Envy is one of the 7 deadly sins. Envy is having hatred or ill will because of another's advantages or possessions. Resentful dislike of another who has something that one desires. I'm going to do all that I can to destroy that person's position. We've been hearing that quite a bit lately. I will break him and take away all his possessions. My brothers and sisters, that's envy. Cuts deep, dangerous. 37 Psalm says, do not fret because of evil men, or be envious of those who do wrong. For like grass they will soon wither, like plants they will soon die. Evildoers, talking about evil. I'm driving a Ford and that evildoer's driving a Mercedes-Benz. Evil. I'm eating hamburger helper. And that evildoer's eating porterhouse steak. Evil. Pure, unadulterated evil. I'm shopping at Kmart, and that evildoer's shopping at Neiman Marcus. Evil. Looking at the 15th chapter of Luke, the parable of the lost son, we know about the prodigal son. Tells his father, he said, Dad, I want my inheritance now. You gotta have it now. You gotta get away for a while. So the father, being wise, he knows he can't handle it. But what he says is, okay, all right. He gives it to him. The son goes off and, oh, he has a good time. Spends time in the good life. Yes, pretty women. Drink, parties. And you know he winds up losing his inheritance. Everything his dad gave him, he wound up throwing it away. Just floundered his inheritance. Now he has to get a job feeding the swine and also living with the swine. And he thinks about it, he says, you know, my father's servants eat better than I do. So he thinks, he says, I'm going to go home and I'm going to ask my father for forgiveness. I'm going to tell him, I am not worthy to be your son, and I will work as your servant. So the son starts on his way home, and his father sees him in the distance, head bowed down, torn and tattered, ragged, doesn't even have a pair of shoes to wear. Coming home, dad goes out and meets his son and says, well, you were dead, but now you live. You were lost, but now you're found. Come on home, son. Takes his son in the house and puts a robe on him, puts a ring on his finger, puts shoes, sandals on his feet. Tells the servants, bring the fattened calf, we're going to have a party. We're going to throw a banquet because my son was lost, but now he's found. And when his brother was coming home from the fields of working out in that hot sun all day, and he heard all this music and all this dancing, he said, what's going on around here? He asked the servants, what's happening? They said, well, your dad was throwing a party. You see, your brother came home, and he's safe and sound. Oh, dad never put on a party for me. I've slaved out in these fields in this hot sun, and what do I get? I don't even get a thank you. So he refused to go in the house, but the father came out and said, what's wrong? He said, you never even gave me a young goat and share with my friends. He said, but son, let me tell you one thing. Let me tell you something. Your brother was dead, but now he lives. He was lost, but now he's found. You see, son, you have everything I own. All this is yours. So do not be envious. Rejoice and come on in. We find the same type of envy in the 23rd chapter of St. Luke. During the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, thief on the left says, if you are the Messiah, save yourself and save us. Thief on the right says, we got what we deserve, but this man is innocent. He's innocent. And we can go on with examples. But let us return to the grape pickers in the vineyard. And so how we might understand this story. It is right in front of us, you see, we have a tendency to focus on the fact that the laborers did not all put in the same amount of work. That is just us being preoccupied with our limited understanding of faith. What we probably should focus on is the fact that each of the workers received pay for a full day. Each of them was offered the same regardless of circumstances and regardless of what transpired before. A full day's wage was paid for all day laborers and for the newcomers as well, for the greatest and for the least, for the first and even, yes, for the last. God does not treat us all the same from our human perspective. But from a faith perspective, God wants the best